I'm a K-I-N-G, baby, I'm all you need. In the off-white Rari, baby, we run the streets. I'm a K-I-N-G, Westside royalty. I'm a K-I-N-G, baby, that's all you need. I'm a K-I-N-G, baby, I'm all you need.
Welcome back, everybody. I am your host, Steven Basita, and you're on my podcast, Get It. And thank you so much for joining us. And as most of you know, I've been absent the last few weeks. It's been a crazy summer. For those who've watched my podcast, I run an organization called Wayne Basketball, and the summertime is the craziest time for us. And I've been traveling all over the entire country. So doing the podcast thing is a little more challenging. So this is my first one back in a while. And my guest today is Jamal Sampson, and he is a former NBA player. He's got an amazing story. I'm so excited to walk through that with you guys, and I'm just gonna dive right in. So Jamal, thank you so much for joining us today. And just for context, he is very tall. If anybody watches social media, I posted a picture and I look like I'm 5'2", because I'm standing next to this giant, and he was kind of bending down to help me out a little bit. And I'm 6'3", which is the best part. Definitely made me feel short. Good times. So let's dive right into your journey, my man. So you played in the NBA, but let's back up. Let's go to, as you were a kid growing up, when did you know that you wanted to play professional basketball?
For me, it came at a fairly early age. I actually didn't like basketball too much when I was younger, but I come from a family of athletes. My mom played professionally overseas. My dad played in college and played a little bit professionally. And so coming from a family of athletes, like, you kind of propelled to the forefront of, like, you're going to be an athlete. And then on top of that, I was taller than everybody always. So that's the first thing you get. You got to play basketball. So it probably took a hold of about 10, 11 is when I started, like, okay, like, basketball seems to be my path that I'm going to take. So I kind of, started playing, liked it a little bit, and then it was off to the races from there.
How tall were you at 10, 11 years old?
11, I was probably about 6 feet.
Gosh dang, man. How tall are you?
Right now, I say 6'11". I mean, I was listed at 7, but 6'11" sounds better to me. I was 6'11 and a half when I registered for pre-draft camp. So,
all right, but you've been 7 feet.
Yeah,
that is tall. That is tall. So, when did you actually reach that height?
The end of my sophomore year of high school. So, the end of my sophomore year, I had a big growth spurt.
Oh, man.
8th grade, I was about 6'5", and then freshman year of high school, I went to about 6'9", and then I peaked out at the end of the sophomore year.
So I also peaked out at the end of my sophomore year in high school, but I was 6'3". Now, I did play basketball, and I was like, oh, I'm killing it. I'm taller than all my friends. I was thinking I was going to be like 6'5", 6'6", 6'7", because I do have tall uncles. I have uncles who are, my dad's 5'10", my mom's 5'8". I'm 6'3", but my uncles were 6'5" and 6'6". I was like, oh, I'm definitely, and my mom's dad, he was taller. He was like 6'2". So I was like, oh, I'm definitely got the genes. I'm going. No, I maxed out at 6'3". I never grew after that. Every year I'd go like measure myself and see if I was still growing. I was always disappointed. Super frustrated, but my gosh, dude, that is you're a tall man. And let me ask you, just because I know what it was like for me when I hit that growth spurt, I just like, you kind of get clumsy. I'd trip over myself. I'd always walk into things, and I'd always have a knot on my head until like my junior year, maybe late junior year, early senior year. I'd finally just grown into my own skin,
Mm-hmm.
When did you finally grow into your own skin and stop racking your head on stuff? Because you're a tall human, and there's a lot of things that you could hit your head on.
To be honest, that's a tough question, because even now, sometimes, depending on where I'm at, like, to get under a doorway sometimes, like I naturally duck. Like it's second nature now. But there's sometimes like I might be ducking and I'll come up too early and bam. Like, so it still happens to the day. But in high school, that happened a lot. Like trying to get through doorways because I wasn't used to it. So I clanked a lot of doorways.
Don't go to the UK, bro. I got a new learning experience. A few years ago, I took my dad.
Yeah.
Oh, I racked my head on everything because everybody there's like 5 feet tall. They're all short.
Yeah.
It was not friendly to my head. I definitely looked like I got in a fight when I came home. Well, all right. So you're 10, 11. You've dove into basketball. You're obviously the tallest guy, which probably doesn't change until you get to the league. So let's get into you're in junior high. You're playing ball. You're probably playing club at this point?
Yep.
And what club did you play for?
So I played with Southern California All-Stars, SCA, and my team, we stayed together. So I played with the same guys from sixth grade all the way through high school. So the main group of guys that stayed together was Josh Childress, played in the NBA, Tyson Chandler, and the guy Cedric Bozeman that went to UCLA. So it was like us four. We stayed together. We're all in the same class. We stayed together from sixth grade throughout high school.
And Tyson Chandler played in the NBA.
Yeah. Well, he had the best career of all of us. Yeah.
Just for people who maybe not know. Yeah. And do they all? So I know you live in Huntington Beach. Do they all live still locally, or have they all moved out?
They're all back now. So actually, Tyson's back. He's living in out in Orange County now. Cedric that I was talking about, he's in the LA area, and Josh is in Orange County too. So we're all back in SoCal area.
Yeah, I just talked to Josh actually. He's, for those who don't know, Jamal did a camp for me, and he's doing another camp tomorrow. And Josh is actually another guy I've reached out to for doing camps that Mario West linked me up with when he linked me up with you, which was great. So, all right, so let's go into high school now. What high school did you go to?
So I started off, I'm from Inglewood area. So my freshman year, I went to Westchester High School. Went to Westchester, we had a good team, we won state, but I ended up transferring. So we had a great team, but I didn't play a lot my freshman year. My mom wanted to move out of LA area. So I ended up moving to Orange County, and I ended up transferring to Mater Dei. So I finished my last 3 years at Mater Dei High School.
And who was your coach at Mater Dei?
Gary McKnight.
Yeah, he's been there forever.
The legend of Mater Dei.
And his son and I have a pretty good relationship, Clay. But yeah, he's been forever, man.
Yeah,
crazy. And he's just, he's got that system on lock, bro. And it's funny because I coached high school basketball for a high school too. I was only there for a year pre-COVID. Obviously, COVID changed my life up a bit, but we're not in the same division. We're not even close, but I was happy. I was like, because I set a new win record at the school and the ball was rolling forward. And I was like, you just got to think of like what Gary does, and you just need to do a smidgen of what he does, right? He recruits all these kids. He finds players transferring to Mater Dei. I was trying to explain because the school that I went to, just to be honest, they had the last 15, 20 years, they just lost all the time. They didn't win any games. And so when I came in, I was like, look, I'm going to reshuffle things. I'm going to help start the path moving forward of winning, changing the culture. And then when you do that, you're able to have access to some kids that you might not have access to.
Yeah.
And it worked out. And last year, fresh, soft, JV, and varsity all went undefeated for the first time in school's history. And varsity won CIF. And that was as far as they could go because there was no state due to COVID. And now they moved up 2 divisions. They were a 5AA school. Now they're a 4A. They might even be 3, but for sure 4A. But they might be great for them. So really positive movement there. So it's of course fun to see. And of course, Mater Dei was in my backyard. I lived in Fountain Valley, and Mater Dei was 5 minutes. And I've gone and watched the Nike extravaganza there. Like, for people who don't know Mater Dei basketball, Mater Dei is a powerhouse, national powerhouse basketball high school, like throughout the nation. They play all the top ranked teams, and they typically beat them all. Great little program there. So you're at Mater Dei, and as you're having your career at Mater Dei, what were some of the highs and lows? You're obviously playing varsity. You're a sophomore. You're 7 feet tall. Just tell us about awards and the experience that you had there before you got to college. And then when did you start getting college offers?
The college offers for me started actually freshman year, going into sophomore year, because I attended Nike All-American camp. So going to Nike All-American camp puts you on the big stage in front of everybody. So doing that for 3 years, that puts you in front of all the college coaches and stuff, and you start getting recognized, getting ranked in your class and all that. And obviously going to Mater Dei helps because, you know, when you go to a smaller school, you play local teams, but Mater Dei is always playing a national schedule. So we're playing, you know, televised games. We're playing against top-ranked teams back east. So you're getting a lot of looks from different people. And that's the one great thing about Mater Dei, I would say, is exposure. You can't get the exposure you get at Mater Dei at other schools. I think that separates them from other schools, and why a lot of players want to go there. A lot of players are like, you know, I could be a great player here, like you, like at Fountain Valley High School. I can average 30, but is anyone going to see me average this 30? You know, you go to Mater Dei, you can average 12, but you're averaging that 12 in front of everyone. And so that exposure just makes a big difference. But Mater Dei was great for me. I loved it. Great experience, good school. We won state. We went to 3 state titles, 3 state championships. Won 1 out of the 3 my senior year. Trying to think. Awards for me, I had a good high school career, obviously. I ended up being like top 20 in my class. End up being voted for a couple All-American games at the end of my senior year. Trying to think. But there was also some lows. I suffered a lot of injuries starting in high school. So I remember I got injured. I was supposed to be selected for the McDonald's game out of high school. I ended up having ankle surgery, so I had to decline. So I actually didn't play in any All-American games out of high school because I had to decline because I had to have ankle surgery. Got a lot of college offers. I remember I initially committed to UCLA out of high school. Some things happened. The other guy I mentioned on my team, Cedric Bozeman, that played with me, SCA, he also went to Mater Dei. So we played high school and AU club ball together. He ended up going to UCLA. I ended up pulling out. Just one, there was a lot of stuff going on with recruiting with UCLA, but then also like it was too close home for me. I'm like, I kind of want an experience where I get away for college. My mom can't come knock on my dorm room door. So I end up taking recruiting visits to UCLA, Kansas, North Carolina, and those were my 3, and UConn. And I wanted to go to North Carolina. And so at the time, Bill Guthridge was at North Carolina, and he ended up retiring. So right before I was going to commit to North Carolina, he retired, and they brought in Coach Doherty. And I wasn't familiar with him. So funny story is, when I was at Mater Dei, we had a freshman there named Harrison Shane, and Cal Berkeley was recruiting him. And so I had never talked to Cal. Like, they came to the school to recruit him. And like, as they were there, I'm like, man, Cal, that's Pac-12, far away from home, not close to home. I'm like, but close enough for my family to drive up to a game. And so they left that afternoon. I went to Coach McKnight, and I'm like, hey, I kind of want to check out Cal. And so he called them, and they had just landed back in the Bay Area. And he said, you know, Jamal's interested in Cal. And they said, he was too high up on the ranking list. We didn't think we had a shot at him. So they actually flew back down the next day. I took a recruiting trip like 2 days later and ended up committing. So they weren't even the school that was initially recruiting me, but it just worked out. And so, yeah, long story short, I ended up going to Cal Berkeley for a year. And I came out in the draft after my freshman year. So I was, you could say, one of the original one and done players.
And what was so you went to Cal, and during that time, you could have still gone to the NBA without having gone to college. So what made you choose to go to college for a year? And then what made you choose to leave college after a year?
So I actually tested the waters out of high school. But like I said, I couldn't play in any of the All-American games because I had to have ankle surgery. And so I tested the water. I got feedback that I would be a mid to late round, first round pick, but I couldn't do any pre-draft workouts. So that made me nervous, like not being able to work out in front of anybody. My senior year, I played about half the games because I had a bum ankle. So I didn't play in a lot of games my senior year, kind of played in the bigger games that they needed me. And so I pulled out of the draft, tested the water, but I already knew like my goal was I want to make the league as soon as possible.
Okay.
And that's why I ended up going for a year, then coming out. But I had ankle surgery that summer going into Cal. Ankle surgery went decent, played at Cal that freshman year. More so I got nervous too, because even in high school, like growing real fast and everything, like I went through a lot of injuries. And so I'm like, a lot of guys, they say stay in school. And I think education is hugely important, especially for athletes. We retire early. You got to have something to fall back on. But at the same time, I'm like, for big guys too, with injuries, like your window is small. So I saw the window and I'm like, I'm taking my window now. I'll go back to school and get the education too still. So that's the route I chose.
Yeah, I know. There's not a lot of Shaqs, man, that can play.
Yeah.
Like look at guys like Greg Oden, who was phenomenal at Ohio State, was projected to have a phenomenal career. And, he went number 1 in his draft. Kevin Grant was number 2 to Seattle. My home team, baby. And there's right there. Seahawks hat and Superstars hat.
Oh, I see the Seahawks back there.
So I tell you what, man, I am a diehard Sox fan, but obviously they sold shortly after, which broke my heart. But yeah, man, Greg Oden was a beast. And same thing, he got in the league and he wasn't there very long. Injuries and talk about that's the same. For so many big guys, that's year, 2 years, 3 years, and they're done.
Yeah.
And Shaq was surprising, right? Because he's a big human. And the
big guy
in his body, right, has to take on a regular basis. Just like, dude, like for him to have had the career he had is a miracle. Yeah. Absolute miracle. So Shaq's one of so there's 4 guys I really want to meet that I've never met. Magic Johnson and Bill Russell. And that's a funny story for another day. But I've met like a lot of guys. I sat behind John Wooden in my first couple of years in California at the John Wooden Classic at the Honda Center. John Wooden. Okay, this is why, for people who don't know, I never miss opportunities. If I ever saw a girl that I thought was cute, I'd ask her out. Like I never miss opportunities because of this one reason.
Yeah.
I moved to California and I played college basketball. Long story short, I didn't get to finish my career. I had career-ending injuries. I wanted to play overseas, and that may have been a possibility had I been able to finish my career. But that didn't happen. I didn't finish my career. And so John Wooden has been a very influential person in my life, indirectly, because I didn't know him personally. And my college coach got to spend a couple of days with him and told us all these stories. And it even made it worse for me, right? I was like, dude, I just want to meet this guy. I sit behind him at a basketball, at the pond for their UCLA thing that they do. And, he has some security guards, and of course he's older, and I didn't say anything to him. I never introduced myself. All I do is be like, hey man, I'm a huge fan. I just shake it. That's it. Didn't even do that. Dies a year later. So I never get that opportunity. Because of that, I was like, I will never miss an opportunity ever again for the rest of my life. It's not going to happen. And so I just took that approach. I was like, dude, because you never know when you're going to get another shot. So I have coached against Kobe Bryant over the years because of my girls program, and he had girls teams. And we would literally sit next to each other, like next to each other. Like I'm in my chair here, he was in it right next to me, And so he's a really humble guy. We actually had built a strong acquaintanceship. I wouldn't say we were friends by any means, but we had a good acquaintanceship, and a great guy. Really enjoyed coaching against him. I remember the last game I coached against him. So when I'm in the middle of coaching and stuff, I'm not going to take pictures with people. That's just, I don't have that time, but I had parents that took pictures of me and him together while we were coaching, which was cool. So I have some of those pictures, but I remember having to hold up my clipboard. So my clipboard, was pretty much, like this. And I'd have to hold up my clipboard over his face when I'd be talking to my girls. because they'd all be staring at it. I'm like, ladies, I'm right here. And he would just be laughing so hard, you know, and I'm like, and when he tried to complain, the rest would be like, bro, the rest are going to talk to you. Like, they're Clippers fans. Get out of here. I just love giving him a hard time, you know. He was always such a graceful guy. He was a humble guy, though. It was great getting the chance to coach against him. It was us. When he passed away, I was actually coaching my girls' team that I had coached against him before, and I was gonna be playing against him again in a few weeks. And man, my phone was blowing up, and I thought it was my wife because I don't look at my phone when I'm coaching, but my pocket's vibrating. I was like, dude, this is ridiculous. I pull up my phone and have all these text messages about Kobe dying, all these missed calls. Now I'm looking around and seeing people in the stands crying.
Stuff,
craziest day. But so Shaq's one of the four.
Yeah.
Well, let me do this in order. Michael Jordan is number one. The worst part is one of his trainers works for me. And I've still never met him. And been working for me for years. I'm always like, bro, if MJ's in town, please. I won't even say anything. I just want to sit at the table.
Yeah.
He's like, all right. I to this day, I always harass him like, bro, when am I going to get this chance? Like, I just want to meet the guy. I've seen his sons play in high school and college. They both played at Mater Dei or against Mater Dei in the extravaganza. I'm like, dude, I just want to meet the guy. Mm-hmm. He's number one on my list. I want to meet that guy. That's it. I just want to meet him. I just shake his hand. I have so much Jordan gear, it's stupid. I've been a Jordan fan my whole life. Like, dude, I just want to meet the guy. So Jordan's number one. Shaq is number two.
Yep.
The glove, Gary Payton is number three. And Kevin Durant's number four.
Okay.
Really want to have a shot at meeting him. But you know, like, I don't know, man. If I could just meet Michael Jordan, I'd be like happy. Like, I'll give up my whole list for Michael Jordan. Like, dude, I want to meet the guy. And you know, like, and again, Kobe was great. Nothing against Kobe, but you know, Kobe, and I always get in these dumb debates, man. Michael Jordan, in my opinion, I've been around the game since I was born, is still the GOAT. Nothing against LeBron, nothing against Kobe. And again, I had a great acquaintanceship with Kobe. He's an awesome guy, great coach. He was a phenomenal player. I mean, he was a killer, dude. And I really enjoyed the few conversations I had with him. Mm-hmm. Highly intelligent guy. But there's a reason why everybody gets compared to Mike. Because he's the greatest. And I just want to meet him, man. I just want to shake his hand. Anyways. So going back, though, you know, the whole being these massive human beings, and you are a massive human being. I mean, you're a slender, athletic guy, right? Shaq's a heavy-set guy. But you had a great career yourself. So, you know, you go to Cal, you have your year, obviously, with the injuries and stuff. And what was your freshman year at Cal like?
Freshman year at Cal was good. One that was good for me, like being in Northern California, first off, it's like a different state up here. So it was totally different from SoCal. I'm like, man, it's a whole different state up here. So I got the real true college experience, like I was away from home. But even on the basketball court, we had a good team, made it to the NCAA tournament, made it to the Sweet 16. I started every game my freshman year at Cal. You know, great team, love my teammates and everything like that. And obviously the Pac-10, the Pac-12 at that time, the Pac-12 was a great conference. So we had great players.
Pac-10 at that time.
Huh?
It was the Pac-10 at that time.
Pac-10, yes. Pac-10 at that time. And, you know, we had a lot of guys that were draft picks. Coming out. UCLA had a bunch of guys that came out.
What year did you go to Cal, just so there's context?
So I was there 2002. 2002 season is when I came.
So just for context for people to understand this, because this is important. During that stretch of time that you were there, which I know was for only a year, but like from the late 90s through the early 2000s, the Pac-10 was the most dominant conference in college basketball.
By far. We had 5 teams, I think, my freshman year in the NCAA tournament. Yeah. You had UCLA, us, Arizona. Arizona was, a powerhouse during that time, the late 90s and stuff. I grew up actually an Arizona fan. So I grew up
still a powerhouse most of the time.
Yeah. So we had great teams. USC actually, when I was in college, was good. They had a pretty good team. They made the tournament that year. Washington was decent.
I knew you would say that. I'm a Wazoo fan, so it hurts my feelings about UW. But yes, and I actually worked with the UW players, and I actually trained Spencer Haas, who played.
Oh, you did? Okay.
For a number of years. But I also worked with guys, a lot of guys that came from that UW program. I was the strength coach there for a number of years, and I also trained some of those guys like doing basketball stuff. So that was my first real time working with players. But I had missed Brandon Roy. That was the one player I missed that I never really got a chance to. But I worked with Nate Robinson a little bit. Great guys. But man, Brandon Roy was, gosh, you talk about a player. If he had not suffered injuries, and you can say the same thing about Derrick Rose and a couple of guys, but Brandon Roy, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, had he not gotten hurt and left when he did, if he had a career that, let's say, Kobe had, for instance, as far as longevity-wise, Brandon Roy, in my opinion, would have gone down as one of the top 5 NBA players of all time because of what he brought to the game. And I'll never forget when they were his senior year, they were in the I think they were in the Sweet 16. And he got into he did something happen. He got into a scuffle or something. But he wasn't allowed to play the next game. Yeah. And they were steamrolling everybody. I think they were favored to even win. And of course, when he got taken out, they lost the very next game, which was a huge bummer. But like, just from a player, what he did, and like he was a low-key guy too, which is why it's hard to have these conversations unless you're really an invested basketball fan and understand the game. But what he did on both ends of the court, defensively and offensively, his understanding of the game, how he played, man, he was so good. So good. And that was a huge bummer because I was a huge Brandon Roy fan.
He had the total package. Offensively, he could score from anywhere, post, perimeter. Yeah, he could do it all.
He was good. So you have your career at Cal. Now you know that you're definitely going to get drafted. You had a good career. So when did you start getting the chirpings of where you're going to end up in the pick? When did guys start talking to you? What was that process like for you?
Yeah. So, I mean, after the tournament, we get bumped out of the tournament, you come back, you start the whole process, interviewing agents and stuff like that, and kind of, hearing different opinions, where you're going to go in the draft. And I interviewed a couple agents. I initially signed, it's been so long ago, I forgot his name. But the first agent I signed was right out of college. I ended up staying with him for a couple of weeks, and it was, I forgot what happened, but he signed a couple more guys that were also bigs at my position. So I was like, this is a conflict of interest. So I ended up going with another agent. And, at first I was hearing in the first round was pretty much where I was projected. Okay. And so I ended up having, I want to say I worked out for 20 teams. And I was just all around, just having workouts here, there. Worked out for a couple of teams, like 4 teams twice. So it was like a hectic time coming out of Cal that summer, pre-draft. I didn't end up playing in the, at that time, it was the pre-draft camp that was in Chicago. My agent thought I should sit it out, and I ended up sitting it out. Probably looking back wasn't the best decision. I think I would have helped my stock by going, but I set it out. And then so I ended up slipping into the second round. But it was still a good experience all in all. I ended up second round, ended up being drafted by Milwaukee. Utah selected me for Milwaukee. So my rookie year was in Milwaukee, which was a culture shock from a guy coming from Southern California, to say the least. Just say, and when I came out, I was still 18. So good stories. Like when I came out, there were 2 guys that came out of high school. Amari Stoudemire came out my year out of high school. He was a class under me, and I forgot who the second guy was that came out of high school. But at that time, because I was always young for my grade, I was actually the youngest player in the draft. So I was the youngest player drafted that year. And I remember being in Milwaukee, coming from Southern Cal, and even though I went to Berkeley, obviously still California, doesn't get that cold. And I remember our first road trip, we took a game, and we come back, and it's maybe 5 below windshield. And I got like on, you know, I'm coming from Cali, I got like little mini sweatsuits on, a little thin blazer, and I'm coming from the plane, and I'm in pain. And I remember I had Anthony Mason was on my team, and I remember him. He's got this big old fur coat on, and he's just laughing hilariously at me. I'm just shivering coming off the plane or whatever. And going to the Midwest from California was a huge shock.
Yes, it is. So I'm from Seattle. Moved to Southern California, lived in Southern California for 15 years before we've been in Denver now for almost a year. Bro, nah, man. Out here, it ain't like back in Seattle. Like I've experienced cold before. Also, I've never experienced cold coming off of 15 years of Summerland. For people who don't know what Southern California is like, it's summer year round. Yeah. That's the only way to say it. We don't have, these are our 4 seasons. We have early summer, midsummer, late summer, and we have 2 weeks of spring. So we only have a 2-week, maybe on a bad year, 4 weeks of spring. That's it. That's it. And spring's nice. So it's not bad. Like people don't understand. We don't have seasons in Southern California.
No.
So I went from not having seasons to moving into a place that has seasons. It snowed here in like August last year. Like we got here mid-August, like mid to late August. It snowed like
that's crazy.
A few days later. It snowed like a few inches. It was like 80s. Yeah. It was 80 degrees. It snowed like 4 to 6 inches that night. Right. So the next day sucked. The next day was like cold, but it was like 78 degrees. It's like, I can't take the weather here, man. It's crazy. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Yes. Southern California is beautiful. It has nice weather. You can't beat the weather. And I can definitely relate now because having to go to a place that has real seasons and cold. I spent a whole morning this past year shoveling. I couldn't even get out of my front door. There was so much snow. This is not an exaggeration. It snowed in less than 8 hours. It snowed 4 feet. 4 feet. Actually, it might have been a little bit more than that. I got up in the morning to let my 2 dogs out, right? I get up in the morning. I put my dogs. We have 2 rescues. They're pit mixes. Every morning we go on a little walk, let them pee, poo, all that. I open up the first door, and then we have the glass door that slides out. And I remember looking at it, and there was snow piled high, and I was like, well, I don't know how that's going to work. And I physically, listen, I'm a big guy. You're a massive human, okay? I'm 6'3", 200 pounds, and I'm in shape. Not the best shape of my life, but I'm definitely not in bad shape. I couldn't physically get the door open more than like half an inch. So I had to shut the door. I had to go down through the garage with one of those massive, a snow shovel I've never seen before in my life. I've never shoveled snow before. Like, it's like the size of the width of a car. Take that snow shovel through the garage. I had to dig myself out of the garage, which we lived in a townhome complex. And it was, I think there's 4 homes. So we're on the far end. So I had to shovel all the way out to the street. I had to shovel all the way the whole sidewalk, up to the walkway, up 4 different flights of stairs, then all the way through to my individual residence.
Yeah.
I get in the house. So this whole thing, by the way, is taking me like well over an hour. It's probably like 90 minutes. Okay, I am in winter clothing because it's like 2 degrees outside. However, I have been working out for 90 minutes now, roughly. I'm dripping in sweat. I open the door and my wife has finally woken up. So she's coming downstairs. She's like, what's going on? So what are you talking about? She's like, you're all sweaty stuff. I was like, have you looked outside yet? She's like, no. I was like, oh, please, just look outside.
Yeah, go look.
Like, wow. I was like, yeah, I couldn't even open our door. I had to start, and I told her the whole story. And, she doesn't really care, but I care. Different, man. It's different. So yes, I can imagine that weather being different. So now we talked about, obviously, bigger guys like yourself and the longevity in the sport. So how many years did you play in the NBA?
So I played a total of 6 years in the NBA. Then I played 4 overseas. So I played 6 in the NBA and 4 in China.
10-year career, which is a really good career, especially for someone that's 7 feet tall.
Yeah.
And did you battle with any injuries during your 10 years?
Oh, absolutely. So during my NBA career, I had 5 surgeries. So I, like, to this day, like, one of the things that, you know, obviously a lot of athletes that go through injuries, you're always like, man, I never got to see my potential because I was always injured. You get injured, you spend it, you rehab, you know, spending time rehab, and you're trying to get back in shape and get back to where you were. Then another injury, setback. And it's like you're fighting to try to get to where you know you can be if you were healthy. So right. That was pretty much the sum of my career, was always fighting to get back where I knew I could be.
And what was the mental toll on you like?
Oh, that's hard. You know, a lot of players, a lot of people think like being an athlete is easy, but like the mental toll of like getting injured, people are like, oh, they're injured. They're just, you know, they're just collecting the check. I'm like, it's definitely not that simple. Like the grind and the mental like fortitude you have to keep like getting back out there, like, and making sure you put in the work to rehab to get back to where you were. It's a grind, like going to therapy, working out, getting back in shape, lifting, getting yourself back to where you were, because the NBA it's always a new crop of guys coming to take your job. So it's nothing guaranteed. So when you're injured, you got to be working 110% because there's new draft picks. And one thing I always tell people, because sports in general is very difficult to play professional sports. It doesn't matter if it's football, baseball, basketball. But basketball to me is the hardest. And I always stress this to kids now, because if you're going to the NFL, 1, there's more roster spots. 2, you're only competing against guys in America for the most part. It's an American sport. Baseball, yeah, you have some international country. Basketball is global. You've got guys from everywhere. Yes. Yeah.
Just to continue your point, football has a 55-man roster. Baseball has a 38, 36-man roster, something. I mean, it's much higher. But like all the sports have big rosters. Basketball has a 15-man roster. 15. Yeah.
15. And you got, and like I said, there's guys coming. If you look in the draft, you see, you know, 20 guys that are international guys. Like, you know, you're literally competing against guys from across the globe. And there's 400-something guys in the NBA. Like, when you look at that number and you're competing against all these players, it's so hard to get to the NBA. People don't understand that.
I just want to pause on that. Just to say it one more time. So just to reiterate what he just said, there are only about 400 players in the NBA. And the NBA, as we all know, is the best league in the entire world. It's the best players in the entire world. So to break this down for people who maybe haven't heard my podcast in the past, to be a high school varsity athlete and play a college sport, and we'll stick with basketball for now, you have less than a 1.8% chance. To play Division I, you have less than a 0.04% chance. To make it to the NBA, so just take that. So from high school varsity athletes, you have less than a 1.8% chance of playing the college sport. That's the JUCO level or junior college level all the way through D1. You have less than a 0.001% chance of making it to the NBA from college. Just so there's context. You have a better chance at winning the lottery than you do being a professional athlete in the NBA or just a professional athlete in sports in general, but especially the NBA. You actually probably could win the lottery a couple times and be more capable of winning the lottery 2 or 3 times in your lifetime than being a professional athlete, specific to the NBA for sure. And you achieve that. And I think it's really important for people to understand this is such a hard achievement. And then going back to what you're saying, that the injuries, people that haven't played sports outside of even high school, there's such a drop off in context of understanding. Because even in high school, you're only practicing once a day. It's a couple hours, you know, you're not really doing anything crazy. But in college, it's a job. A job you don't get paid for. Now you do, but you didn't beforehand. and the amount of hours that go into it. And people, again, they don't understand, like, you have to maintain a good grades, which is, when I was going, it was a 2.5 or above, which was a C+ or above average, which that doesn't sound hard, but it can be depending on the major you're in. And I took a harder major, which was a horrible decision when I first started. But, I've got, and for most athletes, you have morning practice or workout, then you go to classes, then you have an afternoon film session, study hall, treatment. Then you have evening workouts and practices, and you might even have a midday workout too. I had 3 workouts a day on top of film study, team study hall, team treatment. I mean, it's 8 to 10 hours of your day is invested in your sport 7 days a week.
Yeah.
Not including travel and all this stuff. And so when people are like, oh, it's not that hard to maintain good grades, it is when you're working 10 hours a day to be the best you can be, so you can represent your school and you can be competitive, and dealing with injuries and dealing with all these other things that you've even addressed. People don't understand. They just think it's so easy. And then when I did a speech in college that was defending what athletes make, because everybody gets so upset, well, athletes shouldn't make what they make. Well, first off, you have to break it down. Let's say that you're going to get $200 million for a 5-year contract. Okay, well, let's first of all go that $200 million that they're going to get, 50% that's going to the government. So now it's $100 million. But let me, just to make this easier, let's go back to $200 million. You sign a 5-year deal, you're getting $200 million. 10% of that is guaranteed to your manager and your manager and your agent and all that. So your 10% is gone. So now you're at 180 million. 90 million is gone because of taxes. So you went from 200 million, now you're at 90 million. So so 110 million is gone. You didn't even collect any of that. That went to agents, managers, and the government. Of that 90 million, which 90 million is still great.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of other little things that get nicked from that, and people don't really understand. And it does happen. So that 200 million that everybody sees, oh, they're gonna get 200 million. No, they're probably gonna really walk with maybe like 75 to 80 million. Yeah. Again, 75 to 80 million is not bad, but it isn't 200 million. And so people get fixated on these numbers of, oh, they're getting all this money. Sure. But let's go back to, they're not making all that. And then they sacrifice their whole life to get to where they are. They sacrificed I never went to school dances. Some guys do, some guys don't. I know it's a wishy-washy thing, but lots of kids, they don't. They sacrifice, man. They sacrifice friends. They sacrifice vacations. They sacrifice time with their family. They sacrifice all these things, and people don't understand, like, the sacrifices that they make to be the best, to continue their career, is astronomical. Yeah. And this is why they get paid what they get paid, because everybody watches them play, because you want to see them play. So they should get paid what they get paid. They're bringing all this money to these organizations, and they work their whole life for it. Most people, 99.99999% of people, are never going to do that stuff. And so there's a lack of context. People don't understand that either. And it really is frustrating when I hear people talking about players and like, oh, they're overpaid or overrated. You have no idea. Shut your mouth. Try to live in their shoes for a day. I guarantee you, it's the only day you're going to try. People just don't.
I would guarantee that most people would not survive a rigorous workout program, and the amount of time that goes into preparing yourself to be able to play. Like, people just think you just roll the ball out and you get on the court and you go play. They don't understand the context of what it takes to get ready to be able to perform at the highest level.
No context at all. People have no idea. But it's different. And I didn't play at the highest level. I played JUCO for 2 years, and then my career ended. I transferred. I was injured. The condition of my scholarship was I couldn't redshirt. No medical redshirt. I had to play right away. I was an out-of-state kid. I was going from Washington State, which is where I grew up, to Oregon to play for Westchester. And I was injured, and my scholarship was revoked because of my injury. And I was only guaranteed a certain amount of money in my letter of intent, and I got guaranteed it was like $6,000. Yeah. Out-of-state tuition is expensive, and I grew up low income. So listen, I grew up humble. I recognize that it was not as bad as some other people in the world, but I grew up in the hood. I grew up with not having much, and my life was very different, and I couldn't afford it. So that was under that. But man, injuries too, man, for athletes. People just don't understand, like, so many athletes that could have been amazing you've never heard of because injuries ended their careers.
That is one of the truest statements. I tell people there's guys that from SoCal that, I mean, even my AU team, I named 4 guys and we all went to the NBA. But if you would have asked somebody when we were in 8th grade, not one of the 4 of us was the best player on the team. Like there's guys who go through injuries or off the court stuff that never make it. Like there's so much that goes into it. Like you said, education. Some guys don't have the dedication to actually put in the work school-wise and do the basketball stuff. And you see guys that end up having to go to junior college that don't have the work ethic to survive at junior college because everything's not handed to you school-wise. You got to actually go to class and keep the grades up, and they just fall off and they never make it. So there's a lot of different like obstacles that you see guys who definitely have NBA talent never make it.
Never. And it happens every day. Every day. Mm-hmm. It's crazy. Well, man, I really appreciate you being with us. And is there anything else you'd like to say or tell people? Nothing particular. Like for me, I always stress just when I'm ever talking sports and basketball, like I always, especially like with you, working with you with camps with kids, like I always like to tell and make sure if any younger people out there playing basketball, like the importance, and I know everybody says education, but take it from a guy, I had a 10-year career, which the average, professional career is 2-3 years. And I was able to play for 10, but even after playing for 10, I retired at 29 after 10 years of playing. Like the education piece, like knowing what to do with the money I made a lot of good money, but like, if you don't have the education piece, you see a lot of retired athletes that are financially struggling. They're in bad places. So I always like to stress to younger guys, like, it might not seem like the education is important. It's like, oh, I'm gonna go to the NBA, I'm gonna make this much money, I don't need to have that. But you gotta be able to take care of that money. A lot of guys get taken advantage of by financial advisors. You gotta be able to watch your own money. You can't just throw your money in somebody else's hands and say, hey, do this for me. Like, you gotta be responsible, and that takes being educated to do that. So I always like to stress to make sure of any younger viewers out there, make sure you educate yourself. You can watch your own finances and do all the stuff yourself. Well, I couldn't agree with you more. And I mean, ESPN did a 30 for 30 on it. 85% of professional athletes are broke within 3 years of playing their sport, regardless of how much money they've made.
Yeah.
Keep a tight circle, man. Everybody wants something from you. And it's so sad because these kids get taken advantage of because they are kids. They don't know better. Like, oh, well, these people came up with me. Yeah, but how many really came up with you, and how many are really going to be there for you when you have no money? The guy that Mark Cuban played for Mark Cuban helped him win an NBA championship that he went and picked up because he was homeless and he got
Delonte West.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Delonte West. Yeah. Made millions of dollars, literally was homeless. Mark Cuban went and got him because a video of him fighting another homeless guy and getting beat up went viral. And Mark Cuban has spent a pretty penny taking care of him and getting him back into a positive place. But that's more likely than not the story of a lot of guys. And, Mario West obviously set the two of us up, which I'm very thankful for. And I know Mario West, one of the things that he does is he helps NBA players who played for 3 years or longer transition into the real world.
Yeah.
And, I don't want to overstep my bounds here, but I did I drove him around because he flew in from Atlanta. And he had to handle some work stuff and I got to hear a couple of the conversations he had to have. And they were really tough conversations with people that, he helps with a group that actually helps give money to guys who need it to help get their lives kind of going again. Yeah. Some of these people got, money and they just pissed it away right away. And it's just like, and then he has to have those conversations about how it's, there's nothing else like that you were given. Yeah. It's just like, man, the education piece is so critically important. And listen, I have learning disabilities and I still emphasize how important education is. And I I almost didn't go to college. I almost just went and joined the Army. My mom's a saint. She wouldn't let that happen. She fought tooth and nail for college. And I ended up walking onto the basketball team and I got a scholarship, which was great. So it worked out in the long run, but, and I ended up liking college. I really was passionate about it after getting that chance, but I hated school until I got to college because I had such a bad experience because I didn't know I had learning disabilities till later in life. And, but the education piece, man, is so important. You do need to understand how to handle your own finances. You need to understand how to balance a checkbook. You need to understand what a car should actually cost you and how to save money, right? You don't need 10 whips. You need like
this is a fact.
You know what? And listen, I've had years in my life where I've done really well financially. Yeah. Listen, I've had 2 cars before, but I would never spend more money than 2 cars. And right now, my wife and I, we share a car. I sold my car in California. I don't need it. And we're perfectly fine with 1 car. We're looking at getting a second car at some point, but we've literally had 1 car while we've been here in Colorado the entire time, and it's worked out perfectly fine. Yeah. And, you know, I'm like, why not just save the money? Yeah. Like, we don't need another vehicle. And yeah, we can afford another vehicle. That's not the point. Be financially wise with what you have. Like, you know, and instead of going to the club and popping bottles and spending $200,000, be responsible. You know, like, you don't have to live, because again, you live this lavish life. Eventually it runs out. And, you know, be very wise as far as like, have people in your life that are also trying to be the best in their industry. Have someone that understands finances, that goes to college, that you have a great relationship with, and that you can give a little bit of money to, and he can help you grow it. And you can build a relationship of trust. Go to people who you really, really trust. It doesn't matter if they don't manage other NBA players' money. Like, people are, oh, well, this guy does this. And that's how so many people get taken advantage of. They go to the same guys, rip them all off. It's just like, you know, be smart, man. Have an understanding of things. Like, even a basic understanding of things will do you far better. And people just, man, it doesn't stay forever. Money goes quick, and leeches find their way onto you. You got to understand, like, I have worked with a couple NBA players, and I'll protect their names for now because it's still going on, but helping with even investment stuff. You know, they need help with whatever it is in their lives that they're trying to do, and they still make good money, but it's just like, it just doesn't stay with them. And it's crazy how much they spend. And so I actually work with an investment group. These guys are like freaking the smartest people I know, literally the smartest people I know. And I've done stuff with them. And they've, you know, like, some of the questions they're asking, these guys have no idea. And it's like, how do you not know? Like, they think it's just, oh, I use my name and people want to give me money because they know I can pay it back. It's like, no, it's not how it works. It's not how it works in the real world. But like, maybe for you, your friends came to you and you're like, yeah, here's a check. You know, but it's just, it doesn't work like that in the real world. And you need to have understanding. And like, I tell people, like, watch Shark Tank, watch educational TV that's fun to watch. If you want to like continue to grow in your education, you don't want to like sit behind a computer and a book and read, then watch educational TV, things that are going to help you understand how to do things correctly so that you don't get screwed. Because it is truly easy. But hey, man, I really appreciate you. We went far over the time I thought we were going to go over, but I really appreciate you coming on here. Again, Jamal Sampson, for those who are hopping in here, and I'm super excited to have you at camp tomorrow. I'm sorry I can't be there. I've been battling a little bit with being healthy with all the traveling I've done, and I don't have COVID for all those that might be freaking out. But I am sick, and I don't want to expose myself to anybody else. I'm trying to keep the head cold game to myself. But hey, thank you so much. And for all of my listeners, thank you so much. This is Steven Basita on my podcast, Get It. We are on the Social Nostra Network. Please make sure you like, subscribe, comment, follow us on Instagram. We're on YouTube. We're on Spotify. We're on Facebook, Twitter, any platform that is out there, we're on it. So please make sure you keep engaging with us. We appreciate you guys. Thank you so much, my man, for being with us today. And everybody have a wonderful rest of your day.
No problem.